A vengeful blade severed the lineage of an ancient people in one night. The great blue sky watched a civilization's fire flicker toward eternal darkness. But the secret survived. Long before the rise of modern states, the ancestors of the Turks lived beneath the gaze of Göktürk, the eternal blue sky, in the rugged cradle of Central Asia. Their enemies, fueled by a jealousy as old as the mountains, descended upon them with the singular intent of total erasure, leaving no hearth unquenched and no soul alive to tell the tale. Imagine the stillness that follows a slaughter, the kind of silence amidst the reeds of a desolate marsh where the wind bites harder than any iron blade, lay a 10-year-old child, the final survivor of the Lin-fu tribe. He was a boy of the steppe, with the high cheekbones and sun-darkened skin of his ancestors, though now his face was as pale as the mountain snow. His enemies had been thorough in their cruelty. They did not merely kill his kin, but sought to break him body and soul, hacking away his hands and feet before abandoning him to the biting cold. He was left as a sacrifice to the mud and the reeds, a broken vessel of a forgotten lineage, gasping for air as the frost began to settle on his cooling skin. The scavenger birds of the steppe circled above, their dark wings blotting out the last of the light, but the boy's gaze remained fixed on the vast, unblinking blue of the heavens. He was a child of the plains, reduced to a fragment of flesh, yet in his heart, a primordial destiny. To any mortal observer, his death was a certainty, a mere footnote. But as the sun dipped below the jagged horizon of the Altai Mountains, a divine shadow was descending from the ancient peaks, ready to rewrite the laws of nature itself and forge a legend that would howl through the coming centuries. The wind over the marshes of Central Asia did not sing that night. It mourned. In the shallow, freezing waters sat a child, barely 10 years old, whose name had been swallowed by the smoke of his burning village. His limbs, once strong for chasing colts across the steppe, had been ruthlessly severed by the blades of his enemies, leaving him a broken trunk of a human being, cast aside like refuse in the reeds. He waited for the cold to claim him, but the great blue sky, Göktürk, had a different design for the last of the Lin-fu. Out of the swirling mists of the high Altai, a shadow emerged that was neither man nor ghost. It was a she-wolf of impossible proportions, her fur the color of winter moonlight, and her eyes burning with the golden intelligence of 1,000 ancestors. This was Asena, the sacred daughter of the wild, sent to witness the end of one lineage and the miraculous birth of another. She did not approach with the hunger of a scavenger. Instead, she moved with the heavy rhythmic grace of a goddess. Asena looked upon the boy's mutilated body, and she began to lick his wounds, her saliva carrying the primordial magic of the earth, sealing the flow of blood, and day after day, she brought him fresh meat to sustain his failing strength, and she offered him her own milk to drink, a celestial nectar that infused his human bones with the iron spirit of the wolf. The boy, who should have perished in the mud, began to thrive under the watchful gaze of his divine mother. Recognizing that the enemies of the boy would eventually return to search for survivors, Asena took the child between her powerful jaws and began a journey that defied the limits of the physical world. She carried him far from the blood-soaked plains, ascending toward the jag. She did not stop until she reached a hidden cleft in the rock near Turpin, a gateway to a secluded emerald valley protected by insurmountable mountains. In this cave of ancestors, she laid him down. It was here, in the sacred silence of the high peaks, that the broken child grew. As he matured, the boundary between the human and the animal began to dissolve. Asena did not merely save his life, she claimed his soul for a greater purpose. She saw in this survivor the potential for a new kind of kingship, one that did not rely on the fickle whims of man, but on the enduring meritocratic laws of the pack. She would eventually take him as her mate, weaving the blood of the heavens with the resilience of the earth to forge a line of. From this union of wolf and man, a destiny was carved that would soon echo across the entire world. Inside the belly of the Altai Mountains, protected by jagged peaks that bit into the frozen sky. This was the Cave of Ancestors, a lush valley hidden behind a veil of stone where the seasons stalled. Here, the survivor boy, whose limbs had been restored by the ancient magic of the wild, looked upon his bride, the great she-wolf Asena, with eyes that had seen the end of one world and the birth of another. In the flickering golden light of their mountain sanctuary, 10 sons were born, and they were like nothing the earth had ever seen. They carried the dual fire of the human soul and the wolf's primal instinct. These were not mere children. They were the first of the Turks, the celestial ones, possessing the golden hair of the morning sun and eyes the color of a winter moon. As they grew, they did not crawl, they prowled. Their voices were a melodic harmony of human speech and the rhythmic howl that calls the pack to the hunt. Among them was one who stood taller, his mind sharper than the obsidian blades they fashioned from the valley floor. His name was Ashina. He possessed a wisdom that seemed to flow directly from Göktürk, the eternal blue sky. While his brothers tested their strength against the mountain lions, Ashina sat in the silence of the cave. He understood that his people were destined for more than survival. They were destined for sovereignty. Under the watchful, proud gaze of the mother wolf, these 10 sons founded 10 clans, weaving a tapestry of blood and spirit. They practiced the ancient rites of the forge and the hunt, preparing for the day their lineage would outgrow the stone walls of their cradle. They were the transition between the beast and the sovereign, a hybrid dynasty tempered in the solitude of the heights, waiting for the moment the Iron Mountain would finally part to let the world see its new masters. For 400 winters, the children of Asena multiplied within the sanctuary of the iron-rimmed valley, their hammers striking rhythms that echoed against the sky until their very blood. They were the Tamirci, the master blacksmiths, bound as vassals to the shadow of the Ruran Khaganate, bending their backs to craft blades and armor for masters who did not share their celestial lineage. But the valley of Ergenekon, once a womb of safety, had become a prison of stone and metal. The grass was no longer enough for their herds, and the horizon felt too narrow for a people born of a wolf's wild spirit. Bumin, the man who would be Khagan, stood before the sheer face of the Iron Mountain and felt the ancient howl of his mother Asena stirring in his chest, commanding him to lead her children back to the world that was rightfully theirs. He called upon the elders and the smiths, commanding them to gather the wood of 1,000 forests and the skins of 70 oxen to create bellows that breathed with the force of a hurricane. They piled the charcoal high against the weakest point of the mountain, and for days the fires burned with a heat so intense it mirrored the primordial sun until the very bones of the earth began to weep molten tears. Red-hot liquid iron poured down the slopes like a river of blood, carving a path through the impassable barrier until a narrow passage to the outer world was finally revealed. As the smoke cleared and the air of the great steppe rushed inward, Bumin Khagan did not hesitate. He raised the tuai, the sacred banner topped with a golden wolf's head high above his head. Under the gaze of Göktürk, the eternal blue sky, the Ashina clan rode out from the shadows of the Altai, no longer mere smiths or subjects, but a sovereign storm ready to reclaim their destiny. They looked upon the open plains and knew that the scent of the wind was the scent of freedom, a divine gift from the mother who had nursed their ancestor in the marsh so long ago. From that moment in 552 CE, the world would learn to tremble at the sound of the wolf's descendants, for they had traded the heat of the forge for the fire of conquest, and the Iron Mountain would never close behind them again. The Ashina Khagans of old have long since departed to the halls of their ancestors. Their great iron forges cooled, and the wild grass of the Orkhon Valley growing tall over the silent steles of princes like Kultigin. Yet, if you stand upon the high ridges of the Altai when the wind begins to moan, you will realize that the she-wolf never truly left her children. This was the divine mandate, a sacred promise whispered by Göktürk, the eternal blue sky, decreeing that the blood of Asena would forever flow through. It was a charismatic authority that transformed a scattered tribe of blacksmiths into the masters of the Silk Roads. The golden wolf-head banner, the Altın Kurt, was not merely a standard of war, it was a beacon of identity, a symbol of a people who refused to be broken by the chains of the Ruran or the passage of centuries. To the sons and daughters of the steppe, the wolf was never a beast of nightmare, but a mirror reflecting the highest virtues of the human spirit. It represented the only creature on Earth that could not be domesticated, a creature that thrived in a meritocratic pack where the welfare of the collective was guarded by the strength of the individual. Today, from the bustling streets of Istanbul to the vast wind-swept plains of Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, that ancient howl still vibrates in the... You see it in the fierce independence of the Turkic republics and feel it in the Bozkurt salute that remains a defiant signal of kinship across Eurasia. They carry within them the memory of the boy in the marsh, a reminder that no matter how deep the wound or how certain the defeat, the spirit can be nursed back to health by the wild grace of the divine. The legend of Asena teaches us a truth that survives even when empires crumble, that greatness is often born. It tells us that we are never truly alone in our darkest valleys, for the ancestors watch from the stars, guiding us toward a hidden... The story is a testament to the endurance of lineage and the idea that a single act of compassion toward the broken can seed a forest of kings. The ancient stories still speak to us. Subscribe to hear more. Tell us in the comments.